Time to break down the news on this testosterone webisode. There's been a flurry of activity in the NFL off-season ever since the Super Bowl about 2 months ago. We'd like to dive into it. I'd like to thank John once again for joining us. This is John Hollywood Robinson, writer extraordinaire for the Testosterone website. But diving right in, John, we have to start with a little bit of depression in the land of the purple. Our studly left tackle, Bryant McKinnie, went out in southern Florida, tied one night, and for a nightcap decides to take a banister, a stanchion to the head of a bouncer at a Miami, South Florida strip club. John, what's your Purple Heart telling you about this situation?
Well, I don't like it at all. I don't know why these players can't control themselves. This is the fourth time that McKinney's been arrested since he's been with the Vikings. And I don't know if Brad Childress is going to stand for it any longer. He's an all-pro talent, and I think the Vikings need him, but the guy just can't stay out of trouble.
Yeah, it's devastating to our team, especially because we know that Bryant McKinnie is in the player conduct policy, whatever they call it in the NFL, and this infraction should lead to a suspension. Now, whether that's a 4-game suspension or a year-long suspension remains to be seen, but we know that Roger Goodell, the new commissioner in the NFL, has been extremely hard, or much harder than his predecessor, on players and their conduct. And so now it seems like the looming situation is coming, that Bryant McKinnie is going to be away from the team for a certain amount of time. And John, what do you think that's going to do to our offense, specifically in the running game?
Oh, I think it's going to impact the running game greatly. Until the offensive line gels, Pearson's going to have a hard time finding some running room. And losing Tony Richardson and McKinnie and Tavares Jackson still needs to grow behind center. He's at least a year away from being a bona fide quarterback. The Vikings could struggle while McKinnie's out.
And I'm very concerned about that as well. You know, it's just a tough loss to lose a guy at such a key, crucial position. And John, I couldn't even tell you who his primary backup is right now.
I can't either.
I think it may be Artis Hicks. If that's the case, at least he's a big body. But offensive line is so crucial in the NFL. Do you think that this will alter the Vikings' plan in the draft at all?
I don't think so. I think McKinnie his lawyers will find a way to get around it, and you know, if Goodell stays out of it, he may not serve any suspension at all. These players always seem to find a way to get on the field, so I don't think it's going to impact their draft strategy very much.
Sure. Well, I'm hoping myself that a tackle was in the plan for the second round. I do feel like we need another body on the right side, and the right side of our offensive line does have some needs. So hopefully they were already thinking about using their second or third rounder on a tackle before any of this Bryant McKinnie business came around, and that just makes them feel like that was a good move, because you got to build from within when you're building your team. So that means offense and defensive line. Our defensive line's in great shape. Obviously now we have trouble on the offensive line. So everybody out there in the land of the purple, keep posted, and we'll be keeping you guys updated time and time again as far as what's going on around the Bryant McKinnie situation.
You mean they're not going to go after a wide receiver in the first round?
Well, let's hope not. I mean, it would be very nice to see a little bit of a different mindset here. It's either going to be wide receiver or defensive end. But let's hope that there's some success for the Vikings at their first round pick this season. We haven't had that, I think, since Randy.
Yeah.
But moving along, there is another player in trouble with the NFL, in trouble with the law as always. Pac-Man Jones. I just want to touch on him very briefly. Apparently, his suspension will continue into the preseason. So everybody who's expecting him to be back as a member of the Titans, hold your horses, because we're not 100% sure what's going on there. There is trade rumors right now that you're going to want to keep an eye on, because if Pac-Man were to get traded, he could definitely impact another team's secondary in a major way if he can ever get back on the field. Right. Some fantasy football news. The Seattle Seahawks have gone through a major change in their running game, and John, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. Julius Jones and TJ Duckett both have been brought in. It looks like Shaun Alexander is going to be a June 1st cut. But first of all, let's talk about what's your take on the Seattle running game. Can Julius Jones and TJ Duckett do what Shaun Alexander has in the past?
I think they can do better than he did last year. Mike Holmgren definitely wants to run the ball this year. He was not happy with the running game's performance last year. Julius Jones is Lightning, and TJ Duckett will be the Thunder. I think they're going to have a running back by committee there, and I know the Seahawks like Jones because he tore him up on a Monday night game playing for the Cowboys when he was a rookie, if you remember that. And they remember that game, so they know that Jones is a game breaker, and I think he'll get more chances to prove himself than he did with the Cowboys with Barber there.
Well, he had a lot of chances with the Cowboys. He was the starter all year long, and it wasn't until, I think, the playoffs that they finally started Marion Barber. Now Barber, in my mind, he's a special player with a unique mentality. He's going to steal the job from a lot of your basic running backs. I'm not 100% convinced that Julius Jones can do what Alexander did. I crunched some numbers, and if you combine Julius Jones' rushing and receiving with TJ Duckett's rushing and receiving, they've been in the league about the same number of seasons as Alexander, and they still fall 2,400 yards shy of Alexander's rushing alone.
Well, they weren't on the field very long either. If you watched any Cowboys games last year, sure, Julius Jones was a starter, but Marion Barber would come in on second and third downs. Julius was playing one down, and then he's on the bench, and unless they pick up a first down or he may not even touch the ball on first down, he was not getting a lot of touches or looks very much.
Well, now one of the reasons we're touching on this right now is because we've come to know the Seattle rushing game in the past several years as one of the big impact entities in fantasy football, and so we're just kind of curious to know what's going to happen there. Whether or not we can trust these players. That a lot of that's going to develop. I fully expect Julius Jones to come in and be a preseason monster. I think he's going to be talking a lot of big things, and I think the value on him will get pushed up a lot through the preseason. And then potentially he could have like a slower start. Obviously I don't know because I'm not in Seattle, but that's just kind of my instinct. So that definitely begs the question, what next for Sean Alexander? 2 seasons ago in 2005, the Seahawks averaged 153 yards on the ground and average put up 5.1 yards per carry. In the same role this past year, that number dropped dramatically. The Seahawks averaged only 100 yards on the ground, and Alexander's average was 3.5 per carry. So definitely went from being the best player in the league to just an average, and he was falling off and out of fantasy lineups all year. John, what's your thought on what's next for Sean?
Well, I think you're right about Sean being a June 1st cut. He's going to be looking for employment in this league. He'll latch on somewhere. But Alexander clearly is not the same player he was in 2005. You didn't mention his rushing touchdowns, but he went from 20 rushing touchdowns to 8, if he even got that many.
Yep.
So Alexander, he's a shadow of his former self. I think he will get work somewhere. I think he's still got some in the tank, but he's not going to return to superstar levels.
So now, is it me, John, or did it seem like Sean Alexander just had no heart last year?
Yeah, he gave up. He after he got injured, I think he came back too soon, and he was hurting, and yeah, he just didn't seem like he had any heart last year.
Yeah, it really did seem like that, and I know that injuries play a factor in that, but you definitely want to see a running back that you're going to invest your fantasy play, especially if Sean was a first rounder last year still. You want to see your guy running with some fervor in an attempt to produce for his team, but he just seemed content to be along for the ride, knowing that they're going to go to the playoffs, and he didn't even run hard in the playoffs either.
No, the Seahawks were in total disarray last year.
Yeah, they really seem to be. So keep an eye on what's going on around his situation. There is a new rule in the NFL right now that's been installed that says that a team can notify a player that he will be cut on June 1st, and they can notify him early. That gives the player the opportunity to seek out employment before the June 1st deadline. So I think that Alexander might be the first player that they use this rule on, kind of as the example of how the rule is to be used. So keep an eye on what's going on there. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go to Chicago, the Jets, maybe Pittsburgh. Any other teams in mind?
I think Detroit could use a running back.
Yeah, Detroit would be a nice spot for him, and Alexander would then be in the NFC North. That would be very interesting. Moving along, Chad Johnson, enigmatic wide receiver from the Bengals, has been demanding a trade all offseason. He's wasted no time in sharing his displeasure for the front office of the Bengals. He doesn't care where he goes, and when a player says that, you know he wants out badly.
Yeah, he does. You know, if he'd put as much effort into practice as he did in his sideline celebrations when he scored a touchdown once every 8 weeks, he'd be a heck of a player.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. You know, the things that I've read, and I'm not 100% sure if this is true or not, but if what I've read is true, is that the Bengals will incur an $8 million salary cap hit if they trade or release Chad Johnson. So it just doesn't seem to make any good financial sense for them to do that. The first stage in the Mexican standoff, or the chess game that they're about to play, has just happened because Chad Johnson has notified the team that he will not be there for the first voluntary workout. Therefore, it costs him $250,000 in workout bonus. What's your instinct on this, John? Do you think he's going to be able to weasel his way out of the Bengals organization, or is he going to be in the Queen City for a while?
I think they're going to. I think their Bengals are stuck with Chad Johnson, and you mentioned the Mexican chess game, but Chad's amigo T.J. Hushmanzada also is not going to report to the off-season workouts. So now they've got 2 wide receivers who are potentially holding out. It's not a good way to go into the season for the Bengals. They're going to be in disarray.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, one other question I wanted to ask you about this is the one rumor, the one team that's been kind of popping up who might be willing to trade for Chad Johnson is the Redskins. Now, if you had the unenviable task of working with Daniel Snyder as the Redskins GM, would this be a move that you think would be smart for the Skins, or would you rather just stay away?
Well, if I'm the Bengals, I'd try and get some cash out of Daniel Snyder.
Sure.
He may just be willing to part with it. But it's possible, but I honestly don't think that the Bengals can afford to move him.
Yeah, I really think that you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, another wide receiver. This one is very happy, so he's on the other end of the spectrum. Larry Fitzgerald's got a nice new contract. He really kind of, with the rookie deal that he signed, he, in a sense, hamstrung the Cardinals, and that came to fruition here this offseason. And just a few weeks ago, he signed a $40 million contract, guaranteeing him $30 million. John, what do you think about this signing for the Cardinals, and how does it make you like Larry Fitzgerald in general?
Well, I've always liked Larry Fitzgerald. There's no questioning his talent. Local kid. I'm glad he made good. But yeah, you're right. This contract is holding up the Cardinals franchise. Just an embattled franchise for many years. And it's just another chapter in the book for the Cardinals. They need to resolve this situation. They've had to cut players to stay under the salary cap, and it's affecting their ability to go out and get more free agents. And you know they're going to need money to sign their draft picks too.
Yeah.
So Larry's hurting his teammates. If they want to make the playoffs and have a competitive team, he needs to fall in line here.
Okay, well, that's not going to happen anytime soon. And while the Cardinals shop at the free agency dollar store, Larry's out there shopping for some new bling bling because he just got paid. So, you know, Larry on one side is happy because he got paid. Well, that's making Anquan Bolden feel discontent. What's your take on Bolden? There's a rumor that he wants a new contract now. What do you think might possibly happen there?
You know, Bolden is a good character. I don't think he's going to hold up the Cardinals for a contract. I think he'll say that he wants a new contract or a new deal, but I think he'll report to camps and participate, and I don't think he'll be an on-field distraction for him. And I personally think Bolden's a bargain. He puts up comparable numbers to Fitzgerald for a fraction of the cost.
Sure, certainly, and especially for the Cardinals. Now, one thing to keep in mind, though, is that with this contract for Fitzgerald, it in all likelihood means that Bolden will walk when the time is right. And so just know that eventually Bolden will probably have a new team. Whether or not he can stay healthy until that time remains to be seen, because that's always been the knock on him. Considering the Cardinals, though, they've got 2 great receivers, possibly the best passing receiving core in the league. But who's going to be under center for this team?
Well, yeah. When Kurt Warner's healthy, he's a quality quarterback. Matt Leinart, I don't know, coming off that collarbone injury, they're going to have a quarterback controversy or a competition going into camp. But the thing that bothers me the most about the Cardinals is that they lost Bryant Johnson, who was a quality third receiver who took a lot of pressure off of Fitzgerald and Bolden. So they may see more double coverage this year.
Yeah, it sure seems to be. And I'll tell you that the Cardinals are the kind of team that we're not quite sure what they're going to do in the draft because they've got a new head coach who was his first year last season, did a nice job getting things starting to turn around. I wouldn't be surprised to see them draft on the defensive or offensive line. But they also do have needs at running back because Edgerrin James is another year older.
Yeah.
They're going to want to solidify their rushing game, but it's going to definitely be something that they need to work on the defensive side of things as well.
Well, I thought that's what that J.J. Arrington pick was supposed to do. 9th pick overall in the draft out of California. Where has he been? It seems like the Cardinals are starting over every 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, so. it sure does, you know, and if it's not a bust as a number one pick, then they bring in a coach who doesn't do anything for them.
Yeah.
In one Dennis Green, really, I mean, he wasn't able to get what he wanted going down there, and never really was able to get the quarterbacking that he was able that he wanted either. So, well, that's the news right now. That's as much as we could cover for now. Definitely would like you to be on our site. This is where you're watching the show right now on testosteronesports.com. If you'd like what we've said, if you want to give us a little critique, go click on the feedback icon and shoot us an email. We'd love to hear from you guys out there. We'd like to know what your take is on everything that we've just discussed. Anything else that you'd like us to discuss in our next webcast, shoot us an email and we'll definitely get back to you post-haste. So that's it for this one, a little bit quicker this time, and I think we're going to stay in the saddle for one more. So look down below and hit play on the next one. We'll be right back.